This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Fears of a surge in cases in South Africa after it suspends the use of Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine. Niger thrown into mourning after fire kills 20 nursery school children. And rural communities in Uganda enhance access to clean water using solar-powered digital systems. Welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. We'll bring you the details on those stories in just a moment, but first, here's Ramanyang with the day's business headlines. Rama.
That's right, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. Dubai's DP World demands over $200 million in compensation from Djibouti in a port management row. And smartphone sales continue to rise at a steady pace in Egypt. We'll be looking at the data and plenty more from around the continent in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. Now, South Africa has paused the rollout of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine over safety concerns. The move follows the decision by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Food and Drug Administration, to temporarily suspend the use of the vaccine. This came after reports emerged in the U.S. of rare blood clots forming in 6 vaccine recipients. CGTN's Julie Shire has more details.
Close to 300,000 South African healthcare workers have received the Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 jab without severe side effects or clotting. But the health ministry is taking no chances after reports of severe clotting in 6 female patients in the U.S. after taking the single-shot vaccine.
We have determined to voluntarily suspend our rollout until the causal relationship between the development of clots and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is sufficiently interrogated. Our scientists are confident that the FDA decision is only a precautionary basis, and we expect that this will not result in the complete withdrawal of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Scientists are keeping a close watch on those who already received the jab.
We need to continue to observe. Safety of our participants are important, and anyone who presents with a thromboembolic event in our study, we will investigate. It's important to note that we have seen these rare thrombotic events in other vaccines.
When we roll it out, it goes to millions of people. And when you roll it out to millions of people, you have to be able to not only look for safety signals, but you also have to be able to say, is that safety signal actually to do with the vaccine? Or is it just because things happen when you roll out things to millions of people? You know, health issues do arise. And this is what's called the causality assessment. You really are looking to say, is this really associated with the vaccine, or is it just sheer chance because we're pushing this out to so many people?
Minister Zweli Mkhize reaffirmed the country's commitment to fighting COVID-19. 60 million vaccine doses have been secured and will soon start trickling in. Mkhize is confident the pause will not derail second phase rollout plans likely to start in May.
In the extremely unlikely event that Johnson & Johnson rollout is completely halted, we will not have any impediment to proceed with phase 2 of our rollout with Pfizer. We don't, however, anticipate that the Johnson & Johnson will be halted permanently. We believe it's a matter that will be cleared in a matter of days. We are confident that our rollout of Johnson & Johnson will resume, and so with the 30 million doses of Johnson & Johnson, as well as the 30 million from Pfizer secured, we now have enough doses to exceed the 40 million target we had set for the year.
South Africa's COVID-19 infection rate has slowed significantly since the second wave subsided, but it remains the worst hit country on the continent and is still vulnerable to a third wave if vaccinations aren't rapidly boosted. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Well, South Africa's suspension of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine comes as the country battles a second wave of COVID-19 infections. Earlier, we spoke to Dr. Angelique Coetzee about how concerned South Africans should be about the suspension. Dr. Coetzee is the chairperson of South Africa's Medical Association.
Okay, so far, in South Africa, we have vaccinated nearly 300,000 healthcare workers, and we haven't received any complaints of adverse reactions of blood clots so far. It's not to say that we will not encounter them going forward if we start to roll out this process to the bigger and broader public out there. But for now, it's not really a problem in South Africa, but we will look at the scientific data. So adverse reactions is not something that is uncommon to us, but if you look again at the at 6 people out of 7 million, it's really not a huge number. It's actually, from a medical point of view, for us, we will still, you're still supposed to continue because it's really not going to make a huge impact on anyone. Remember what I did in England with the AstraZeneca, because there's much more clearer data that AstraZeneca is also responsible for some of the clotting that they have seen. And they then decided against whether they should vaccinate the elderly people or with AstraZeneca, or take the chance of them getting COVID-19. And if you look at the stats, then it's far much more easier and better to vaccinate your people than take the risk of them getting COVID-19 and die from it. Well, because South Africa got their own, or our own variant that was causing our second wave and is still going around in South Africa, we only have at this current stage 3 vaccines with enough data against the efficacy of those vaccines towards the COVID-19 pandemic caused by this second strain of us. And the 3 ones are Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Moderna. Moderna so far had not applied to South Africa, and we are going to get our Pfizer vaccines in within the next 2 weeks. So we are in a difficult position regarding only left with Pfizer vaccine going forward. And we all know as well that Pfizer is going to have its own logistical problems with a rollout. So from South Africa's side, we will need to look at the data, the scientific data, and we need to make a call whether this vaccine would still be applicable and for our people in our country. We understand that the United States and Europe now at this moment in time also suspended, but they have a lot of other vaccines that they can use in their countries, and they are much richer than our country, so they can afford much more vaccine variety than we can in South Africa.
Meanwhile, the Africa CDC says it is closely monitoring reports on the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine. Both South Africa and the US have suspended the use of the jab. The US FDA suspended its use after 6 vaccine recipients developed rare blood clots. CGTN Girumchala exclusively spoke to the director of the Africa CDC about these latest developments.
Dr. John Nkengisong, thank you so much on behalf of CGTN. An incident has been heard from the United States about the Johnson & Johnson vaccination, and after a few people were reported dead and blood clottings have been heard after they took the J&J vaccinations, the US CDC and the US FDA have temporarily paused the use of this vaccination. Now, Africa, more specifically in South Africa, this Johnson & Johnson vaccination is being used. But what are you really reacting on the news?
We heard the news yesterday of the temporary pause for the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in the United States. And this was realized after about 6.6 million people have been vaccinated, and out of the 6.6 million, 6 people developed a blood clotting. So the FDA and the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention thought that because of cautionary measures, they had to suspend this and investigate it further. If you look at the events, that is the 6 out of 6.6 million vaccinations, it is really some rare events happening, which would normally perhaps happen in normal settings there. So I think that is a recognition of that. The second thing we need to recognize is that it is a positive thing that the FDA and the United CDC, because of the surveillance systems that they have put in place to monitor people that have been taking these vaccines, we're able to detect this extremely limited few number of people there. So I just want this to be very clear that it speaks to the fact that when we say in public health that we have systems that are monitoring people that have received vaccines, it is actually monitoring them. So that is a positive thing that has happened. Now, we'll wait in the coming days to see what the detailed analysis from the CDC and FDA will tell us, and that will determine the path forward. Maybe, and just maybe, in the coming days, they will say, we've looked at these events, they're extremely rare, and we provide recommendations that this vaccination should continue.
What is the recommendation in general terms from the Africa CDC side for the entire continent when it comes to the usage of this vaccination?
This is a rare event that we are looking at this situation carefully, and we will provide definitive guidance once we know more about it. Remember, this just happened yesterday, and we are in touch with the U.S. officials. We are in touch with the government of South Africa. Yesterday, I spoke with the Minister of Health of South Africa, and we've remained in touch. Based on the analysis in South Africa of everyone who has been vaccinated in South Africa, there's absolutely no event of this nature that has been recorded. South Africa is the only country in Africa that is vaccinating using the Johnson & Johnson because the clinical trials started there. So, and none of the events were observed during the clinical trial phase. So it is, for Africa CDC, we have to watch the space carefully, see more information, and then we'll be able to provide definitive guidelines.
The Chinese government has donated a batch of Sinopharm vaccine doses to Cameroon. Cameroonian authorities, while receiving the consignment on Monday, thanked China for its support in the fight against COVID-19. CGTN's Wanja Mungai has more on this story.
This is the first batch of vaccines to land in the Central African country. Ambassador Wang Yingwu handed over the donation to Cameroon's Health Minister Manuda Malachi. Malachi was also among the first people to get the shot.
Today is a great day for Cameroon and for its health staff. We thank the President of the Republic, but especially we thank China, which has kindly made its vaccines available to us. The priority objective is to protect health personnel who have been on the front line since the beginning of this pandemic.
Malachi called upon citizens to take the jab, especially citizens identified as a priority.
I'm glad I got the vaccine, especially since the minister set an example. I think that his example will reassure the Cameroonian people and will lead them to be vaccinated.
Cameroon is among African countries that have experienced a surge in infections lately. So far, it has recorded approximately 62,000 cases and close to 1,000 deaths. That's according to Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Wanjamungai, CGTN.
Meanwhile, a shipment of Chinese-made Sinopharm COVID-19 vaccines has arrived in Mauritius. Several dignitaries were on hand to receive the donation, including the country's Minister of Health, Dr. Kailesh Jagutpal. According to him, the doses will be used in a national vaccination campaign. Dr. Jagutpal says the shipment was an example of the friendly ties between the two countries. Alan Ganu, the charge d'affaires from the Chinese embassy, said China will continue to work with Mauritius to overcome COVID-19. Further afield, Denmark has announced a permanent halt of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine. It is the first European country to do so over suspected side effects. Health authorities say the country's vaccination campaign will continue without the vaccine, but the move is expected to delay inoculations by several weeks. Denmark had suspended the AstraZeneca vaccine in March after reports of rare but serious cases of blood clots. The World Health Organization and European regulators recommend to continue using the vaccine, saying the benefits outweigh the risks. But Denmark kept the suspension in place as it conducted its own investigations. Well, a surge testing is taking place in 4 London boroughs as the UK looks to keep new variants of coronavirus under control. In the same week that England began lifting lockdown restrictions, a significant cluster of variants was first found in areas in South London. Nicole Johnson has more.
It's a race against time in the UK, trying to contain an outbreak of a COVID-19 variant that was first identified in South Africa. More than 650,000 people in London's south have been told to take a PCR test in the largest surge testing program carried out in the country so far.
So it's a new variant for us in the UK and in England. So all our control measures that we've got in place we think will work against the variant. But of course, what we don't know is whether the transmissibility will be similar or different, as we found with the Kent variant at the end of last year. We found that was far more transmissible. But also, of course, we've got a vaccination programme that we're rolling out at pace. And we want to make sure that our vaccine programme is resilient to any of these variants that might crop up, not just this one, but any in the future as well.
Everyone aged over 11 who works, lives and travels through the area has been told to get tested.
Slightly worrying, I guess, if the South African variant is actually taking hold in Lambeth, but hopefully it's not.
I've been vaccinated twice. I've had both vaccines, so I feel quite protected and privileged. But I was alarmed because there are a lot of very vulnerable people in Lambeth.
Meanwhile, a study looking at mixing different types of vaccines is being expanded. The Oxford Vaccine Group has already enrolled 800 people to find out whether a combination of vaccines for the first and second shots will give longer immunity. Now it's calling for another 1,000 people aged over 50 to join the trial. All this as England emerges from lockdown this week. Shops, gyms and outdoor dining is back, but there's plenty of concern that a new variant could drive the country back indoors. Nicole Johnston, CGTN, South London.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the programme. Niger is thrown into mourning after fire kills 20 nursery school children. And alarm raised over rising cases of illegal stripping of barks from trees in South Africa.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
To that distressing news from Niger. 20 nursery school children are feared to have died after a fire broke out in their school. The authorities say the pupils were among those who could not escape the fire that engulfed 21 straw hut classrooms. The cause of the blaze is still unknown. Prime Minister Ahmadou Mahamadou visited the school in Niamey's Upper Bay district and condoled with the families of the deceased. Mahamadou said it is unfortunate to lose lives during Ramadan and promised to have the tragic incident investigated.
If the fire was criminal, then be assured that we will find the perpetrators and we will do everything to ensure they receive a maximum sentence, because this is not acceptable, especially in town. It is not acceptable, and on the eve of Ramadan, to lose such young children is really sad, and I express all my condolences to the families.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, at least 10 people have been killed and 34 others injured in 2 days of clashes between rival ethnic communities. The violence broke out in the eastern city of Goma during a protest held to denounce the killing of civilians. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
The fighting broke out between the Kumu and Nande communities in the DRC's eastern city of Goma. It occurred amid a protest held to condemn the massacre of civilians in eastern DRC. Members of the Kumu ethnic group blamed the Nande for organizing the protest, which paralyzed business in their region. The rival groups fought with machetes and burned several houses. Hundreds of civilians had earlier protested against the UN peacekeeping mission in the DRC for reportedly failing to protect them against rebels. According to authorities, more than 300 civilians have been killed in eastern DRC by armed groups since the beginning of this year. The governor of North Kivu province has banned all protests in the region following the fighting that left 10 people dead. Congolese troops had to be deployed to restore calm. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
South Sudan's government says it is working to speed up reforms in the country's security sector. This comes at a time when the UN mission in South Sudan has announced its plans to reduce troop numbers by 7% next year.
The United Nations mission in South Sudan says relative peace has now returned to the country. It announced a plan to shift its focus from protecting civilians who were fleeing the 6 years of violence to peace-building efforts. The UN has now handed over displaced people's camps to South Sudan's government.
As I said when I came to South Sudan, our success will be measured by the downsizing of our presence. That has started. Over the coming year, there will be a reduction of our military and police peacekeepers by around about 7%.
There are currently 17,000 UN troops and 2,000 police officers in South Sudan.
South Sudan's government says reforming the security sector is the major challenge it faces. The reforms were scheduled to be carried out before formation of the unity government, but more than a year after the new government is formed, the security sector is not yet reorganized.
A peace deal signed in 2018 outlined how security sector reforms should be undertaken in South Sudan. The former rival armed forces are to be unified, retrained and redeployed. They are now unified, stationed in 17 camps across the country, but they are yet to be redeployed. South Sudan's government says it is working to expedite the peace process.
We need a stronger, unified security sector. According to the letter of the agreement, this time around, for us to fix the security sector of South Sudan, we need to have a professional national security sector, a non-partisan one that is representative of the diverse faces of South Sudan, regional diversity, ethnic diversity in that force.
South Sudan's government says the planned reduction of the number of UN peacekeepers shows that lasting peace is about to return to the country. However, many here remain unsure of that, arguing that the implementation of the peace deal has been slower than earlier expected. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
U.S. President Joe Biden is set to announce all American troops will be pulled out of Afghanistan by September the 11th. That would mark 20 years since the terrorist attacks on New York and Washington launched the U.S. into its longest war ever. Biden's decision does keep the 3,000 troops in the country beyond the May 1st deadline announced by former President Donald Trump. Washington says the delay is due to logistics. Some critics say the departure could surrender Afghanistan to an uncertain fate and possibly a resurgence of the Taliban or Al-Qaeda. An independent monitoring group says at least 51 people have been killed in insurgent attacks in the past 24 hours. And our analyst thinks the U.S. departure will have a big impact on other powers in the region.
Biden, as a keen student of history, knew that Afghanistan was and is an ungovernable seething hotbed of rival warlords, and that it's earned its nickname as the graveyard of empires. The British Empire couldn't hold it at the height of its power. The Soviet Union gave up in 1989 after 10 years, and now the US is giving up after 2 long decades. To say that this entire region is volatile is a profound understatement. So the shockwaves of the US withdrawal and a likely resulting civil war will most affect, in my opinion, China, Pakistan, and Iran. On the plus side, China and its strategic partners, Pakistan and Iran, could be able to extend the range of the Belt and Road Initiative, for example, and eventually include Afghanistan through the China-Pakistan economic corridor across Afghanistan and into Iran, and not to mention also into the Central Asian countries. Also, in Afghanistan, there are an estimated $1 trillion in natural resources that could be a win-win for China and the region if, and it's a huge if, Afghanistan can ever stabilize. On the minus side, however, for the region, Afghanistan could also play a destabilizing regional force, including in China, if it were to want to and try to export its extreme Muslim beliefs into the other countries of the region.
The closure of South Africa's national parks during COVID-19 lockdowns has led to a significant drop in cases of wildlife poaching. But SANParks, the body which manages the Table Mountain National Park, says it is concerned about an alarming increase in illegal bark stripping of trees in forests near Cape Town. Renee Delcam has more on that story.
Bark stripping is the partial or complete removal of the external layer of a tree. And experts say the illegal axing or cutting of trees is a growing problem in the Newlands Forest, the largest forest near the city of Cape Town.
The crime itself is it's quite serious in that it's got a devastating impact on the tree species itself. It basically results in a potentially fatal wound to the tree where it's not able to recover and resprout.
If these trees are being targeted consistently and harvested illegally, we will be faced with tree species that will be listed as vulnerable and endangered.
It's actually quite devastating coming across a tree that's been stripped and left to die in the forest. It feels a bit like finding a poached animal in the bush.
Rangers recently arrested a group of suspects who are now facing criminal charges.
Myself and a colleague arrested 3 suspects in possession of 59 kilograms of indigenous tree bark, which we were able to link to the Newlands area of Table Mountain National Park. They used a sharp implement, which we found in one of the bags where there was bark.
Tree bark is commonly used for the production of traditional medicine in South Africa, which has led to the over-exploitation of many indigenous tree species.
Yes, it is a tree, but it does have an important role in our human society. I mean, if you just take a breath, that is where that comes from. It's the oxygen from the trees. And if we wipe out this forest by continuing with this illegal activity, we would face serious repercussions in the forest.
As much as technology will advance and as much as society will advance, we still need to come back home to conservation and to nature. It's what people are drawn to, it's what we use as therapy, it's how we recharge.
Experts in the Newlands Forest say they use an organic paste of cow manure to return nutrients to the wounded trees.
It takes years for them to grow to this stage. So we have to start planting now to get the forest back to its original state.
Rangers say they love seeing hikers enjoy the unique peace and tranquility of the Newlands Forest, and they've warned people not to purchase tree bark from conservation criminals, as that will lead to further destruction of forests. Renee Delcam, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
And a quick recap of the headlines this hour. The Africa CDC says it is closely monitoring reports on the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine. Both South Africa and the US have suspended the use of this jab. The US FDA has suspended the use after 6 vaccine recipients developed rare blood clots. South Africa's suspension of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine comes as the country battles a second wave of COVID-19 infections. Well, Denmark has permanently stopped the use of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine. It is the first European country to do so over suspected side effects. Health authorities say the country's vaccination campaign will continue without the vaccine, but the move is expected to delay inoculations by several weeks. 20 nursery school children are feared to have died in Niger after a fire broke out in their school. The cause of the blaze is still unknown. The Prime Minister visited the school in Niamey's Upper Bai district and promised to have the tragic incident investigated. And that's a look at your headlines. Well, let's now go to Ramanyang for a look at the business news. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business. Dubai's DP World is demanding over $200 million in compensation from Djibouti in a port management row. And smartphone sales continue to grow at a steady pace in Egypt. We'll look at the data next.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's start in the world of logistics. Dubai's DP World is one of the world's largest port operators. It's also seeking $210 million in damages from the government of Djibouti in an ongoing legal battle over port concession rights. DP World has been locked into a battle with Djibouti since 2012. This dispute centers on the port operator's concession to operate the Dorale container terminal. Djibouti seized the terminal unilaterally in 2018. The London Court of International Arbitration has since then ruled that DP World's concession to operate the terminal is legal and binding. It ordered that it be restored. DP World is now seeking damages for the estimated loss of revenue and management fees from 2018 to the 31st of March this year. The hospitality sector is still reeling from the damage caused to tourism into and out of Africa. For a country like South Africa, tourism was seen as an employment generator and a wealth creator even before the pandemic struck. But the various lockdowns have created a lot more uncertainty. Provincial borders within the country are open to some domestic tourism, but it's generally accepted that the high-end tourism properties are not in a position to offer the massive discounts needed to make their properties attractive to a local clientele. Angela Coppola takes up the story.
Occupancy levels for South African hospitality establishments that have opened as restrictions were eased have hovered between 20 and 30% for the past year, and it's becoming increasingly unsustainable.
These establishments that have opened are literally putting money into the operations to stretch and make sure that they remain open. It simply means that it's not sustainable. The levels that we're operating at the moment, even if we talk about domestic tourism, not sustainable at all. It means you're not even breaking even, you're putting money into it.
It was unprecedented, and hotel operators had to move quickly.
Around this time last year, it was how do we keep these businesses liquid and avoid insolvency? Because the cash dried up extremely quickly, and nobody saw it coming. There was no sort of 3 months of warning. It was an immediate shock. And of course, that created a cash crunch very, very quickly indeed.
Continental hoteliers had to make some tough decisions at the start of the pandemic. Stay open or close.
For us, it was a question of staying open. Because I thought that in this situation, nobody knows what's going to happen. But what's for certain is two things. Every crisis brings some kind of opportunity. And if you close, that's the one thing that's certain. And if there's the other thing that was certain is if you close, revenue is definitely going to be zero.
Countries like South Africa that depend on tourism as a job creator and foreign currency earner are struggling. Industry bodies are calling for help on the demand and supply side of the business.
And we need to figure out a way of helping these businesses. And one of these things is, one of the ways is to, perhaps look at the rates and taxes to make sure that, there is a relief from that point of view, and many other licenses that are related to the tourism businesses, including the liquor license, vehicle licenses and things like that.
The South African hospitality sector is ready to open its doors, but it all depends on the vaccination program getting underway quickly and covering as many people as possible before foreigners will be enticed back into the country. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Also, North Africa, Egypt's smartphone market had a very healthy growth during 2020, despite the economic slump caused by the pandemic. According to the latest data from the financial data firm International Data Corporation, or IDC, smartphone sales in Egypt went up by over 10% last year to 12 million units. Here's Yasser Kim with more from Cairo.
Wael Shaban sells smartphones in his shop that's tucked in one of Egypt's capital's bustling streets. He says 2020 saw a significant increase in sales of smartphones, in spite of the economic fallout from the novel coronavirus pandemic.
Because everyone is staying at home, everyone is trying to kill time by going online while others are working online from home. To keep up with the latest apps and services, many people have had to upgrade their old phones and buy new smartphones, which has then raised their sales.
According to the International Data Corporation Worldwide Report, there are nearly 12 million smartphones that were sold in Egypt in 2020. Samsung has been leading with 25% market share, but Chinese smartphones are quickly catching up.
Chinese mobile phones are in high demand because of the variety on offer. There is a variety in price, a variety in options, and they all have good quality for the market. Oppo, Samsung, Huawei and Realme have the highest sales.
Experts say the market is witnessing a shift since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, as people reduce physical interactions and embrace digital transactions.
Because of the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, people are not able to meet like they used to before. So all their dealings are done through the mobile phone. Naturally, sales increased. In addition, there are new models introduced every few months with more options to attract clients.
Egypt's latest digital transformation drive has had its positive effect as well.
Every state service now is through an app that you have to download. For example, paying electricity and water bills is now through smartphones. It has become a necessity in everyday life.
Experts believe 2021 will see further sales increase as more people and services go online. Yas Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Away from the continent, the European Parliament has given the green light for two key committees to vote this week on a trade deal between the European Union and the United Kingdom. A ratification by the European Parliament is the final step in clearing the trade and cooperation agreement struck between the two sides back in December, and the EU has until the end of the month to do so. If it doesn't, and the provisional application of the agreement is not extended, then the trade deal will cease to apply, effectively leaving the EU and the UK to trade on WTO terms with tariffs and quotas applying. Now, members suspended the voting process last month in protest against UK changes to arrangements on Northern Ireland. A lawmaker said a full parliamentary vote will have to wait until there is progress on the implementation of the withdrawal agreement. Now, here's a term you should perhaps get used to adding to your vocabulary. Ogogoro, or as it's more commonly known, local gin. It's consumed not only throughout Nigeria, but across West and Central Africa too. Here's CGTN's Wilkis Tonyabo with a story of Pedro's. It's a Nigerian brand that's refining and rebranding this local liquor to meet growing demand for premium spirits.
Meet Pedro's, the brand behind Africa's first distilled premium Ogogoro. Founded by Nigerian duo Lola Pedro and Chibueze Akokwe, Pedro's is on a mission to change how the locally made gin is perceived.
There's nothing that separates us from, let's say, whiskey or tequila or vodka or any other category of spirit that is out there, right? Our spirit deserves to be showcased. Our culture and our heritage deserves to be showcased.
Pedro's premium ogogoro is a 100% organic palm spirit, micro-distilled in small batches and handcrafted in Nigeria.
I didn't see much of a difference between some of the big-name brand spirits that we know all across the globe. When you compare those with ogogoro, they seem very similar to us. So we thought we could take ogogoro and just highlight it and showcase it to the world.
To make the local gin, Pedro's team works with communities in Delta and Ogun State, southern Nigeria, who make locally filtered palm sups. These villages are largely surrounded by palm trees, making it easy to source palm sups required to make the drink. The palm extract is stored in drums for days for the liquid to ferment. To give it a premium look and taste, the crude gin is then passed through a distilling machine to filter it and make it smoother.
You can never expect 100% consistency. You get like the fact that there'll be different trees that they're tapping at different times with different fermentation of the palm wine. And so sometimes the flavor will be different, but it'll still be something you know is original or authentic or of good quality.
Akukwe and business partner Lola Pedro hope stylish branding will help sell to upmarket customers and compete with similar drinks in the international market. Pedro's premium ogogoro is currently supplied to high-end restaurants and bars in Ghana, Kenya and Britain. Bulkisanyabwa, CGTN.
And I'll leave it there for the time being. Here's a story that you can lift a glass to at the top of the hour. We'll be looking at the largest cryptocurrency exchange in the US, Coinbase Global. It's finally made its listing at the NASDAQ. How exactly is it doing and what should you expect from this business? We'll have some details for you live from New York at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, back to Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. Rural communities in Uganda enhance access to clean water using solar-powered digital systems.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In Uganda, many rural communities still face challenges in getting water. Only 68% of rural villages have access to a safer water source, according to the Ministry of Water. Now, a non-profit organization is helping rural communities access clean and reliable water using solar-powered digital systems. Isabel Nakiria has more details.
Christine Nachibuka now taps water with a swipe. She's using a digital system that involves loading credit on a token and passing it through a payment system to allow water to flow. Residents pay 2 cents for a 20-liter jerrycan of water, which they say is affordable.
They really helped us. We are no longer suffering. We don't even think about having to walk down the well to fetch water.
Christine's family and millions more live in Uganda's water-stressed areas. She says life was tough before water was brought close to her home.
Imagine we used to walk up this hill very early before we go to school every day, yet we would take 2 routes. Sometimes we ended up being late for school.
According to the Water Ministry, only 38% of the people in Christine's district of Sembabule have access to clean water. This water source has for years been used by both humans and animals. It's not only safe for drinking, but it's also far off. People have to walk over 2 kilometers to access it. The government drilled boreholes in the area, but many broke down. Water Campus, an NGO working to improve access to water in rural communities, is modernizing the broken boreholes. It's replacing hand pumps with solar-powered pumps and supplying cheap water closer to where people live.
We also use a solar-powered digital payment system so that people receive an individual token that they can load credit onto, so that at any time during the day or night they can come and collect water without having to disturb anyone to turn on a tap or have to travel far down to a hand pump.
The organization has built 3 water systems in 3 districts so far, each costing $30,000. The project leaders say the system is reliable and residents are assured of constant water supply throughout the year. The climate in Zimbabwe is semi-arid, meaning not much rain is received here. The community in Christian's village is lucky, but millions more still don't have access to clean and safe water. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Zimbabwe, Uganda.
And it's time now to take a look at your sports news. Here's what's ahead. Tokyo and the rest of the world mark 100 days to the Summer Olympic Games.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Kenya's Olympic-bound athletes and officials joined the world in marking the 100-day countdown to the Summer Games in Tokyo as the traveling contingent enters the final round of preparations for the event. Kenyan Sports Cabinet Secretary Amina Mohamed says the traveling athletes have all received their first dose of the coronavirus vaccine and are on course to be fully vaccinated in time to travel to Japan. On Wednesday, Mohamed and Olympics Kenya President Paul Tegat unveiled the team's rallying call for the Summer Olympiad under the banner, "You are the reason." Athletes have been putting the final touches on their preparations in bubble camps. Kenya will be among the few teams with a 50-50 gender balance traveling to Tokyo.
I just want to report that we have vaccinated each and every Olympic-bound athlete with the first dose. We are working with the Ministry of Health to ensure that the athletes receive their second dose at least 4 to 6 weeks before we leave for the Olympics. The ministry has gradually but steadily created a paradigm shift that places the athlete at the center of all our work, of all our operations.
I remember watching Usain Bolt breaking the world record in 2008 in Beijing. So that also made me have had the passion of also doing sprints because I had it in me. So I also thought about it, and at least while I was reaching in high school, after high school, I decided that this is the path that I want to take.
Nilikuwa nakimbia 100 na 200 meters.
I used to run 100 and 200 meters, but I was rough as a child, so I thought I could use my energy, and when rugby was introduced at our school, I thought it suited me. So I decided to apply my energy in rugby.
So niende nieke energy yangu.
Well, the countdown to the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games marked 100 days to the event, but organizers still face daunting challenges in the run-up to the event. Surges of the coronavirus, including in the host nation, have caused problems with preparations, and uncertainty is mounting about whether the Games can or even should go ahead this summer. The ongoing torch relay has been scaled back with overseas fans barred for the first time and Japan facing new restrictions. However, organizers and Olympic officials have continued to exude confidence that the event will go ahead. Tokyo's Governor Yuriko Koike says despite the challenges ahead, she is hopeful of a good showing once the event gets underway in 100 days' time.
We must cooperate and control the spread of the coronavirus now before we open the Tokyo Games, which will come just in 100 days. I hope that athletes who have trained hard for this moment will show us excellent performances.
South Africa will not be present at the next edition of the Continental Football Showpiece next year after failing to qualify for the AFCON tournament in Cameroon. The result has seen changes in the national team and questions around the chances of the team being able to qualify for the World Cup in 2022. CGTN's Duplessis has more.
The fallout from the failure to qualify for the 2021 Africa Cup of Nations has seen Molefi Nseki lose his job. The 2-0 loss away to Sudan meant that the former national under-17 coach failed to reach his mandate of qualifying for the tournament, which saw Bafana Bafana reach the quarterfinals in Egypt just 2 years ago. It has prompted an apology from the governing body's National Executive Committee to the Rainbow Nation.
Unfortunately, we did not qualify, and we know that emotionally it has affected the country, as we are known to be a winning country, and the expectation was that we qualify and do well in the AFCON. So the National Executive Committee has sincerely apologized for that.
The SAFA CEO denies any knowledge of the confrontational meeting between the former coach and the SAFA Technical Committee that is being reported in the media. But he did admit that the search for the new coach is yet to get underway. According to reports, the name of Pitso Mosemane has been doing the rounds, but it's unclear if the Al Ahly coach will be tempted for a second stint in the Bafana Bafana hot seat. One thing is clear, finding the money to lure the right candidate won't be a problem.
We are not looking to say we are going to restart the whole process, give 10 years or what. Every contract will have deliverables, and part of the deliverables from where I'm sitting and from what Mr. Maluleka says, we need a coach who will be able to take us further from where Coach Nzeki has left. We need a coach which will take us to the World Cup. That will be part of the requirement. So we aim for success, we don't aim for failure.
It is the 5th time since South Africa's readmission to international sport that the 1996 continental champions have failed to qualify for the Africa Cup of Nations. It means now the focus for SAFA urgently shifts to the FIFA World Cup qualifiers and securing a new coach in a short space of time, who knowingly will be stepping into a cauldron in order to ensure the 2010 World Cup hosts qualify for their first global football showpiece in almost 20 years. Duplessis, CGTN, Johannesburg.
More football news, and after last night's round of matches, the 2020